Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Tristan Rallings, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 1 Cheryl Elston. We warmly welcome representatives from the Australian College of Nursing who are joining us here this evening. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families who love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of the more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Captain Pauline Blanche Hempsted. Known as Blanche, Pauline Hempsted was born on the 9th of September 1908 to Percy and Bertha Louise Hempsted of the Brisbane suburb of Graceville. Her father was a commercial traveller, her mother on home duties. The family was hit with tragedy early on, when Pauline's brother, Claude, was killed when he was only 11, crushed between a train and the platform. Hempsted enjoyed social events and dances and attended St Margaret's Girls' School in Brisbane. She trained as a nurse at Brisbane General Hospital from 1934 to 1938. On the 27th of April 1941, Hempsted enlisted in the Australian Army Nurses Service and was attached to the 13th Australian General Hospital. Posted to Singapore and Malaya, she was a notorious hard worker who took charge in the face of sudden influxes of patients. In late 1941, Japanese forces attacked Pearl Harbor and began an assault on the northern Malaya, moving south towards Singapore. Even as the fall of Singapore seemed inevitable, there was a strong sense among the Australian nurses that they should stay with their patients in accordance with their oath of service and duty to the wounded. However, they were ordered to evacuate, and Hempsted was one of 65 Australian nurses who left Singapore aboard the Vinya Brook on the 12th of February 1942. 2 days later, the ship was bombed by the Japanese, and some 30 lives were lost. As they fled the sinking, some passengers were put into lifeboats, and those who could swim made for the nearby Banker Island. Hempsted made it to an overturned lifeboat, and a group of survivors managed to overturn it and climb in. However, shrapnel holes meant the boat was sinking, so they crowded among nearby rafts. Without oars, they drifted aimlessly, and all who could took turns swimming alongside to lighten the load. Eventually, 2 Australian airmen and some Malay locals were able to rescue those aboard the raft and bring them into land. The women were subsequently captured by the Japanese and taken to a camp at Muntok in Sumatra. Life in the internment camp was harsh, punctuated by diminishing rations, harsh conditions and cruel treatment by Japanese soldiers. The nurses worked hard to keep their spirits up, organising concerts and crafting things to sell in exchange for money to buy food. In late 1943, the nurses were allowed to write postcards home. Hempsted's letter to her mother was upbeat and read, "The thrill of being able to write after 12 months' silence and to let you know I am absolutely fit and well, in fact, never better in health. Had trouble with my ear at first, always do with ocean water, but it was soon rectified. We are in a pretty little place, quiet and peaceful, away from any sort of turmoil. You will be disappointed to know your album is at the bottom of the sea. We lost everything. But nonetheless, we're among friends who do their best to keep things and us well and contented. Please keep well and look forward to the happy day when you will be welcoming me home again." As the years wore on, some of the internees succumbed to the lack of food and ever-present illnesses. Pauline Hempsted died after a long battle with beriberi on the 19th of March 1945. She was remembered as an extremely hard worker, and fellow nurse Jessie Simmons later wrote that she was sorry for the trouble that her illness had caused. After the war, Hempsted's remains were reinterred in the Jakarta War Cemetery. Changes to the structure of the Australian Imperial Force in 1943 saw serving nurses given ranks similar to those of their male counterparts. Though she never knew it, Blanche Hempsted was made captain in 1943. Hempsted's mother, who had already lost her son and her husband, who had died in 1942, was informed of her daughter's death in 1945. In the years afterwards, in memoriam notices placed in the newspaper and ending in the words, "Her duty nobly done." As funds were raised to support nurses imprisoned in the war, Several donations were made in Hempsted's memory. Captain Pauline Blanche Hempsted is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. Her photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Captain Pauline Blanche Hempsted, who gave her life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.